Hello and welcome back to Leo Tries. Today I'm going to be talking about therapy and more specifically starting therapy. Okay, so first of all, I want to clarify two things. Number one, I am not a professional in this field and I'm speaking from my own experiences. And number two, I will be using the word therapist to describe both psychologists and psychiatrists interchangeably. This does not mean that they are the same thing, but they both provide therapy for their patients. Also, there are very helpful counselors and life coaches out there that do amazing work. They are not excluded here for any reason other than I have little experience with them, and they do not necessarily focus on mental health, whereas I do. There is a stigma around mental illness as well as therapy. We tend to link the two, and to be fair, often they are linked. Often therapy is recommended or needed for someone to recover from a mental illness. It helps immensely to gain some perspective and to speak to someone you can be honest with about how you feel. But what I think most people don't realize about it is that you don't have to have some sort of problem to go to therapy. A therapist is someone you can confide in who is not connected to your life. You can tell them anything and everything. For me, not all my sessions I've had with my therapist have been soul-searching quests or deep, profound moments of wisdom. We often have chats about what's going on in my life, who I've been hanging out with and why, what I had for breakfast, my latest series I'm addicted to, or even just the song that's stuck in my head. We often spend 50 minutes talking about whatever I want to talk about. Sometimes I just need to tell someone something, and there isn't always time or a place to bring up everything I want to talk and think about. I have many friends that I can talk to about stuff like this, but my therapist and I get to focus on what I think and what I feel. And she's not someone that I need to impress or convince of anything. She's just someone who's like a soundboard for me to think with. I see my therapy like hitting a tennis ball against a wall. I get out of it what I put in. If I hit it at an angle, then it will return at an angle. The curveballs are usually my favorite, and my therapist knows me well enough to know exactly how I like to be challenged. So my first time I went to therapy, my experience was not what I would describe it to be today. I was 14 and my mom was forcing me to go. I had a friend whose mom had told mine about therapy and my mom told me that I just had to. I was furious. How could she send me to this random person to talk about all my personal stuff? No thank you. Leading up to this was a year of me being in an awful mood like 90% of the time and being just awful to my family. I was up and down, and when asked for an explanation, I never knew what to say. Still, my own mom was trying to imply that there was something wrong with me or that I needed fixing. She took me to a large building with long hallways and small offices. I was curious to see the recliner couch. They never seemed comfortable to me when I saw them in movies. I was also wondering about the old balding man who would be waiting to interrogate me. I imagined him sitting behind a big desk and peering over his little reading glasses at me. We got to the waiting area, and once it was time, my mom and I walked in. I walked in to find a tall woman with long curly hair. There was no recliner couch and no little reading glasses. She introduced herself to us and my mom left. I remember getting this adrenaline rush as my mom left the room. Suddenly I didn't have anyone to talk for me or lead the way, so I looked towards the curly-haired woman. We sat down across from each other, sort of these like two little angled couches, and I'm not sure if she could tell how apprehensive I was about all of this, and I hope that she wouldn't be expecting that much from me. She asked me a few questions about myself, about my friends, my school, my family, and I was surprised that her questions were so easy, so I just went with it. By the end of the session, I was talking comfortably with her and even cracking a few jokes. She was quiet and always let me finish my sentences and my thoughts. I ended up leaving that day wondering what this whole thing was supposed to achieve, but I wasn't angry anymore that I had to go because my experience with her was peaceful and reflective, and I hadn't really ever done that myself before, and it was the first time that I was exposed to this. And I don't even think that I could see the value of it then. I just knew that I liked it. But yeah, so I kept going to therapy. My therapy developed with me, and I'm seeing the same therapist to this day. I think that initially she helped me to figure out how to identify my feelings better, and when I expressed emotion, we would talk about why I felt the way I did and if it matched how I was feeling. So I just want to give an example to explain that a little bit further. So if my friend at school didn't pick me to work in a group project, I would be angry. I would tell her about this, and we would think, why was I angry? And I would have to sort of think that, she didn't pick me, and I thought that she would. So maybe the word would be disappointed, hurt, self-conscious, sort of more descriptive words to describe how I was feeling and what was causing the feeling. And it may seem like I'm just using a more complicated word to describe the same thing, but I see it as a way to help others understand me better. It helped me to communicate better with those around me, as well as making me more self-aware of my emotions. Later in life, she helped me figure out how to deal with concepts like death, rejection, consequences, and meaning of life. We have a great relationship. Currently, I'm seeing her once a month, but I have seen her up to twice a week at times where I've needed it. There are a few things that you might not know about therapy. Maybe I've mentioned a few already, but there are a few more things to consider. Number one, confidentiality. If you are talking to your therapist, they may not speak to anyone else about your personal problems and thoughts. It's just you and them. Your family, your partner, and your friends are not allowed to know things about you without your permission. If you want to include a loved one in one of your sessions, your therapist would only discuss with them what you allow. Number two, synergy. You may meet a therapist who doesn't work for you. Keep an open mind, but sometimes you don't connect well with someone, and that's fine. You may want to find someone the same gender as you, or someone who specializes in something that suits you, maybe even someone older or younger. I think that all psychologists and their clients have unique relationships, so don't force it, but know when to move on. Number three, when you join a new therapist, they will often ask you a couple of details, including an emergency contact. So this contact has a few purposes. Number one, if you get hurt on their premises, they know who to get their information from. If you have allergies, if you have any diseases, anything like that, anything that would be relevant medical information, they would be able to get from someone who's close to you. Number two, if you don't show up for a scheduled appointment and they can't reach you, they might use this to find out where you are and if you are okay. Lastly, sometimes people become a danger to themselves and they need attention immediately from their therapist, a doctor, or a family member. I want to talk a little bit more about this last one because I think that there are some misconceptions about this purpose. If you are having suicidal thoughts and you tell your therapist, they will not just immediately call your emergency contact or institutionalize you. Sometimes people who have mental illness can become suicidal or dangerous, and they may need an immediate intervention. But these examples are extreme and would only happen after a long, unstable history of dealing with this. Everyone thinks about death. Lots of people are fascinated by it and what happens after it, etc. Lots of people also think about killing themselves, like more than you think. I think that a lot of people think about it in a non-serious context, but it's important to be able to talk about it regardless of where you stand on the subject. The bottom line here is that you should choose someone you trust as an emergency contact, but know that it is extremely unlikely that it will be needed or used, especially if you attend your appointments and have open communication with your therapist. I've had 2 times in my life where I went to my therapist and told her I wanted to kill myself. Not just that I was thinking about death or found it interesting, I told her that I wanted to die as soon as possible. I will make a more detailed video on dealing with suicidal thoughts soon, but for now this is all that I want to say about it. She ended up talking me through it. She helped me focus on what was around me and to realize that although all of these thoughts were racing through my brain, there was help to be found if I wanted it. I didn't want it at the time, but I kept thinking about my mom, and I wanted my mom to know that I tried my best. So for a while that's what I did, and it worked. Not immediately, but it definitely worked. I feel totally different today to how I felt when I was in the headspace to speak to her about that. I recovered fully and I'm living a happy, healthy life now. I just want to point out that when I started therapy, it was actually years before I actually needed it. But it gave me the tools that I needed to speak up when I couldn't do it alone anymore. I think too many of us suffer thinking that we're alone. It's a part of the reason why I started this channel. I think that if you talk about things and develop your ability to analyze yourself and to know how to move forward and ask for help, anyone can benefit from therapy. Plus, you never know when you'll need it. Now, another thing that I want to talk about is cost. As much as I wish everyone could attend therapy, I know that practically it isn't always possible. My therapy is expensive and my parents are able to pay for it, which makes me luckier than most people. But I've thought about this topic and about how to utilize therapy without as much of a cost. Number one, universities. I live in a university town and not everyone has exposure to this, but if you do, find out if they have a psychology department and if they have young student psychologists working on clients at a lower rate. This is very useful and a lot of my friends at university have made use of this. Find out about research they are conducting and if you potentially stand a chance of being in one of these studies. Remember not to just sign up for any study and to know what it's about and the risks and benefits involved. If you are a student, there may be a society or a group focusing on meditation, mental health, or mindfulness. Look out for these because this is a fantastic way to connect with people who also want to strive to feel better one way or another. Books. I know that books can still cost money, but they definitely don't cost as much as therapy, trust me. So I think that it's really important to read about things that are in your life, like being a mom or not knowing which career path to follow, having epilepsy, being a millennial. There's a whole spectrum of different things that you could read about. It's a really cool way to connect with someone who's gone through the same thing as you, or someone who specializes in what you're doing or what you're feeling. It may seem obvious, but you might find things you never thought you'd share with someone else just by looking for it. The next thing I want to talk about are apps, and the one thing that I want to mention about apps is that you have to be very careful that it's an app that you can trust. You don't want an app stealing your banking info or personal info, sending you spam emails, stuff like that. But there are a few apps that are really, really great. You get apps that send you motivational quotes and sort of different themed ones depending on what you look for. I haven't used motivational quotes because I prefer to read books and to sort of get my motivation that way, but quotes is a really great way to have some motivation for the day. Another one that I have used myself is a mood tracking app, and what these apps do is that they will ask you once, twice, maybe 3 times a day depending on what you set it to, and it will ask you how you're doing. And the reason that I used this app was in order to monitor how effective my antidepressants were, because for a while I became a little bit depressed after I was on antidepressants, and all that I needed to do was adjust the amount that I was getting, and I didn't realize it because I wasn't taking note of how I was feeling. I used that app for about 3 or 4 months, and now I think I'm much better at knowing when I'm in a good space and when I'm not, and whether I'm kind of going up or going down in terms of my usual up and down mood. So I think that this is very, 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 very useful, and I think it's useful for a variety of different disorders, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, just different things in order to monitor yourself so that you know when you are getting better and when you're getting worse and when you're just staying the same. The last one that I want to talk about is communication, and I think that this is specifically more communication with the people that you trust and being open and honest with them. I know that this can be really tough, and I happen to have a very good relationship with most of my family members, but I know that that's not the case for everyone, and I think that whether it's a friend or a boyfriend or a sibling, make sure that you can trust them, but remember to open up and to share with people, because if you don't venture anything, you won't gain anything either. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope that this will help you see therapy in a more positive light. I would also like to thank my friend Monique for suggesting this video to me. I wish that I had thought of it first. It is such an important topic, and it's tough to admit that you need help or that you want to work on yourself, but I think that it's really great that these types of conversations are easier to have nowadays and that they can be available on the internet like YouTube is. It is absolutely worth it though, and I hope that this video puts your mind a little bit at ease if you were wondering about therapy for yourself or someone you love. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. I can talk to about today I was